Are you doomed to be fat? Should you just eat all the candy because there's not even a point? Well, let's explore this. There's a common misconception that's been getting really popular over the past few years, and you could think of it as dieting doesn't work. And the reason why this has gotten so popular is largely due to the New York Times. In 2017, they put out an article called Losing It that really dove into Weight Watchers and clinically controlled weight loss. And so with Weight Watchers, what they found was that most of the people using that system rarely lost more than 5% of their body weight. And of the people who lost more than 5% of their body weight, most of them ended up gaining it back before much time had passed. And in the clinically controlled trials, really the exception to the rule was people losing up to 25% of their body weight. And those people who lost 25%, the vast majority ended up gaining it back. So it looked like a big loss. But what does 25% of your body weight even look like? So let's imagine that you've got a woman who weighs 200 pounds, right? So 200 is the starting point. If they lose 25% of 200 pounds, that's 50 pounds. So now they're 150. And these are people who would go from like 200 to 150 over a fairly short amount of time because they're on super low calories. But as you can imagine, losing 50 pounds in a very short amount of time, then going back to eating normally, if you're like most people, you probably got on that hamster wheel of dieting and then gained it back. And so it's very easy to think that you're just going to be doomed to be overweight your entire life because maybe fate dealt you a bad hand, could be genetics, could be this, could be that. But the truth of the matter is there's only a very few genetic components to obesity that really are going to force you to be overweight your entire life. And those are things like Prader-Willi syndrome. But if you look into Prader-Willi syndrome, the other effects that it has beyond causing somebody to be obese, obesity is the least of your concerns there. So what does this really mean for you? Does it mean that you have a chance or does it mean that you're stuck? Well, I was an overweight kid going through puberty. I had thick glasses, I had a buzz cut, and I just moved to a new school, so I tried to be funny to fit in, but being overweight with thick glasses and a buzz cut, the obvious choice of a nickname was Drew Carey. So that's kind of how I went through middle school, was as Drew Carey. Not the best thing for your confidence when you're going through puberty, but I do know what it feels like to feel stuck. And I could only imagine going into adulthood and being like many people who are probably watching this video who've tried to lose weight in the past, went on that cycle of losing weight and then rebounding, and then you start seeing mainstream media and information putting out things like dieting doesn't work. And that's got to be a really hopeless feeling because I could only imagine just how screwed you would really feel. And as a kid, I would walk past places like GNC and I would look into this world that I knew nothing about. And I would see these weird tubs and like different types of powders and pills, and there's all these muscular ripped people on them. And I thought that there's like some kind of almost magical element to it. And that's what the fitness industry tries to push, is this whole thing of like, we knew everything, you don't know anything, so give us lots of money and we'll like give you little hints of stuff that could put you towards being in a spot that you're happy with your physique and your health. But that misinformation is really what has fueled all the worst parts of this industry. And also that misinformation is what's led to things like this dieting doesn't work mindset coming about, because the people who are writing about it are journalists and they're not scientists. And this is a big problem because you want to have your information coming from reputable sources. So I do actually have some good news when it comes to the question of, are you doomed to be fat? Because the answer is no, you're not. You can do something about it. You can lose weight, you can lose body fat, and you can sustain results. Now, there's a quote that I really, really like that's, Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither were you. So it's going to take time, contrary to what you've probably seen in media and advertisements. Now, there's 4 things that you can do that I would suggest thinking about each one of these things in the long term that will help you lose weight, lose body fat, and keep it off for life, and not be somebody who rebounds. Because let me tell you, I've talked to thousands and thousands of people now, and I could almost play off that I'm a psychic because I can usually tell somebody's story about how they cut calories way back, they lost weight, they felt pretty good, they went back to what they thought was they were eating healthy and thought they were eating an appropriate amount of food, and then weight started to come back on, the weight starts to come back on, and it gets inside their head and they think that there's nothing they can do about it. They see the article like losing it and just give up and then gain everything back and probably a little bit extra on top. That might sound familiar because most people have lived that experience if you're somebody who's lived a little bit of life. Here's the 4 things that you can do to actually make a difference in your life. The first one is very simple. It's called lifting weights. So lifting weights is going to do you a world of good if you stick to it for a long amount of time and you progressively get stronger. Because as you're building up lean body mass, you're building up tissue on your body that demands a lot of energy. So if you have 2 people, let's say they both weigh 150 pounds. If one is 150 pounds and 25% body fat, and the other one is 150 pounds and 12% body fat, both these people walk a mile, the person with lower body fat is actually going to burn more calories while walking that mile. They'll burn more calories just going about their daily activities. And so the more muscle mass you have, the easier it is to stay in a controlled caloric state and not end up in a surplus. And a surplus just means that you're taking in more than you're burning, and that makes it a lot easier to maintain your weight. So lifting weights is huge, but it takes a long time to actually build significant amounts of muscle. I mean, like stick to it for a year. Remember, the whole Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither were you. That's why it's very important to think about this long term. Men, women, everybody can lift weights and build muscle and build lean body mass. It'll do you a world of good. So let's move on to the second point. Get your macro balance right. This is what we do at Avatar, is the macros. Macros are just protein, carbs, and fat. It's the 3 things that all food is made out of. And most people who've never tracked macros before and aren't aware of it, don't know how to read a label, are probably having way too many carbs, way too many fats, and not nearly enough protein. So just getting your macro balance right in the first place is going to help out tremendously. My dad is a good example of this. When I finally got him to start tracking macros after running a macro company for about 3 years, the first thing he didn't even try to hit his targets. He just started tracking his food just to see what he was eating. And he was having things like a bowl of grits with butter in the morning, chocolate milk, just everything. Once he started tracking, he realized, oh my gosh, I'm having 400 grams of carbs, 220 grams of fat, and like 80 grams of protein a day. Totally off balance from what was optimal for his needs and his body. And most people are like that. They're not conscious of what they're eating. And if you just go about your day-to-day life in normal society, odds are you're going to be taking in way too many carbs, way too many fats, and not nearly enough protein, bad for body composition. So now the third part. This is when it comes to actually trying to lose body fat. You want to be in a controlled deficit. So what this means is you're not chasing double-digit numbers for fat loss. We've all seen shows like NBC's Biggest Loser where people are losing 25 pounds in a week, or just these crazy targets. You go to the grocery store, you're in the checkout aisle, and you see magazines that say, like, lose 8 pounds in 2 days, and just these crazy things. That's not sustainable. It's not healthy. Most of that fast, dramatic weight loss is just coming from loss of water weight. But what you got to do is set realistic standards for yourself and aim to have a reasonable amount of weight loss. Because the harder that you try to diet and the faster that you go with it, odds are it's going to come back a lot faster because you've deprived yourself and put yourself in a horrible psychological state. You start to develop cravings, and you're really going to be inclined to fall off the wagon as soon as you're done, right? You want to reward yourself at the end of your diet by going to Golden Corral and drinking all the chocolate out of the fondue fountain. It's not going to work out well for you. So, control as you go down, which leads me to the fourth part, and in my opinion, one of the most important parts. So, reverse. You can think of a reverse diet as the thing that seals your results. You worked so hard to lose this fat, you've been working out, you might be lifting weights, you're controlling your calories, you're controlling your macros, you've made progress, and now you want to keep it. You want to lock it in. That's what a reverse diet does. And so the very simple way to think about it, you have a little graph here. Think about, we're going to use 2 colors, because I realize we have 2 different colors of markers. So let's pretend that this blue line is your calories, right? You start your diet at, let's say, 2,600 calories, and then you go all the way down to 1,600 at the end of it. So during this time, you know, your weight, got to where you want it to go, and your calories also went down throughout the course of your diet. So now you're happy with where your weight is, and you would like to maintain it for the long run. So the way that you do this is by slowly bringing your calories back up. Slowly over time. And you'll maintain your weight. Because really, you have intake and expenditure. These are the two things that you want to think about the most here. So if you have, let's say, we're just going to use the same color for this one, that your intake is at 1,600 and you're burning 1,602 calories or something like that. You're not going to see any differences in your weight. Now, the bigger that the gap gets between intake and expenditure, the more risk there is for unwanted fat gain and weight regain. So as long as you can keep this little window right here tightly controlled throughout the course of that reverse diet, your odds of gaining fat are very low. And you'll get back to a point where you're happy with where you're maintaining your calories at, and you will have kept your results that you worked so hard for. So anyway, long story short, you think you're doomed to be fat? You're really not. We can do something about it. We have that power. And if you enjoyed this video and you want to help spread the word to your friends who think they're doomed to be fat and have got caught up in all this obesity apologetics, please share it, like it, comment on the video, and let us know what you thought. We always feel happy when we get new subscribers. So anyway, we'll see you again. Thank you for watching.